point turner and button gauge is a tool that you must have in your workbox. It's so handy for all sorts of things. You use it to turn out corners using the pointy end, and you can turn out corners on bags, on collars, on cuffs or pockets. So you can just poke the corner out so you get a nice crisp corner. So that's pushing the corners out nicely. The other thing you can do with it is you can turn up hems, because on one side you have centimetres, on the other side inches. So you can mark your hem allowance. So here, if I want a 5 centimetre hem allowance on the wrong side, I'm going to mark it at 5 centimetres. Go along the hem. And then of course I can turn that up on that marked line, pin in place, and it's ready to sew. The other thing you can do with it is you can sew on buttons. So I've got my thread anchored already. For a 4-hole button, I use this to create the shank. So place this over my button position, place the button on top, and then holding those together, I'm going to sew up through the holes of the button and down through the fabric. And what I will have is a shank being created because the button's being held away from the fabric. So when that's done, I now take the turner away from it, bring the thread back up underneath the button, and then I can pull the button away from the fabric and wrap the thread tail round that shank that's been created, just to give a nice shank. So what happens is when you're buttoning up, the button stands proud of the fabric, and you can button another layer on top without it all gathering and looking nasty. So I tie off the thread now to keep that button in place. And I can do exactly the same thing with a 2-hole button on the smaller end. So again, I will place the button on top of the hole, and I can sew through it, and by doing so I'm going to have that little gap and the little shank. But there's another thing you can do with this tool, and that is to use it as a humper jumper. So working on a sewing machine, if I want to stitch very thick fabric such as denim, and I want to start sewing at a hem edge, without the point turner, if I lower the foot is at an angle, so I'm starting to stitch uphill. To prevent that and make it easier to start that seam, I put the point turner behind the foot, and if necessary you can raise the foot a bit higher, put it behind in position, lower the presser foot, so now the presser foot is level because it's got the humper jumper behind it, jumping over the hump. Lower the needle, and I've actually got a slightly longer than normal stitch length because I'm going through about 8 layers of denim. And as I sew, take it away and it sews nice and evenly. So I've sewn nice and evenly through all of those layers with the help of the point turner.